And we begin this edition first up with the latest on the G7 summit, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump having met at the G7 summit, which marked the first in-person interaction between the two leaders in over a year.
And it was highly anticipated. It all began when world leaders took to the stage. This is for a G7 family photo. Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump were seen interacting and they were interacting with other world leaders as they walked onto the stage. While there was no interaction between the two leaders, they stood close to each other, with French President Emmanuel Macron standing between them.
So we have photographs there
and just here, please, down there, please. Ladies and gentlemen.
First downstairs.
As the group photo session came to an end, President Trump walked off the stage with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and Italy's Giorgia Meloni. Prime Minister Modi was also seen huddled in a conversation with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and others.
Now, the ice-breaking moment came when world leaders gathered for the G7 roundtable session. Prime Minister Modi entered the venue. He had a brief chat with EU Council President Antonio Costa, while President Trump was seen interacting with the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. As PM Modi went towards his seat, Trump shook hands with the Prime Minister, exchanged smiles, and the two leaders had a brief chat. It was their first face-to-face meeting in the last 16 months.
Well, then sitting beside President Donald Trump, Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised concerns over the safety of seafarers in the Strait of Hormuz. In his statement, Prime Minister Modi said that those working at sea must be able to perform their duties without fear or threat to their lives.
Now, with Trump looking, Prime Minister Modi also quoted Ronald Reagan's famous maxim, trust but verify, saying that world suffers from shortage of trust.
Later, as the world leaders gathered for an evening reception, Prime Minister Modi was seen lending a helping hand to President Trump as he made his way to the stage. Trump was also seen holding Prime Minister Modi's hand as the two interacted with other world leaders. The warmth between the two leaders could mark an inflection point in the strained bilateral ties. All eyes would now be on the much-anticipated bilateral meet between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, which is scheduled for later today.
All right, to discuss what's next in the G7, we're now being joined live by Dr. Aza Radwan Sedki, joining us from Vancouver. She's a political analyst and author. Aza, thanks so much for making time for us and joining us here on World DNA. When you look at the G7, ma'am, France, Japan, Italy, Canada, UK, they've all faced very pinpointed and sharp remarks from the US president. And you've seen how that group photo looked as well. What's the future of this G7 grouping in your understanding?
The G7 itself?
Yes.
Oh, it will continue every year. This is the 52nd time it is held, and France is holding the rotating presidency, and the G7 will continue to hopefully convince the US to work with them and to join hands and do the things expected of them. This meeting was covering basically three things. The crisis in the Middle East, the tariff wars, and of course Ukraine. Ukraine originally wasn't supposed to be as highlighted, but they did manage to get President Trump to attend the session and to meet one-on-one with President Zelensky. And at the very end say that, in fact, Ukraine is doing better and chances of it winning the war is there, and that they would have to help Ukraine by adding more sanctions on Russia. So this was a good thing. This was a good plus for the meeting.
I hear you.
Dr. Azhar, in continuation with the point you made regarding the Ukraine war, we have a statement coming in from President Trump who says that the Ukraine war has no direct impact on the US. Do you sense the division among the G7 allies already?
No, they're all for Ukraine. The only issue is the US, but the rest of Europe and Japan are all for it, of course.
Dr. Sedki, when you look at what's happened in the last 3 months and how all these nations, when you talk about France, you talk about Italy, they largely asked US, don't use our airspace. The Japanese Prime Minister sitting in the Oval Office was embarrassed by the US President, reminding her about Pearl Harbor. And then you also have the hellhole reference for India. And then you also have other references for Canada, where you're joining us from, repeatedly asking Canada to be the 51st state of the US. So each country would be antagonized to a certain degree with these kind of remarks. And when you see those handshakes taking place or that group photograph, what sense do you get, or what conclusion do you feel this meeting will be able to draw, or this summit of the G7 taking place in 2026?
Diplomacy has to rule. Despite some saying otherwise, diplomacy has to rule. Today, Mark Carney was speaking to President Trump, and he was explaining the fact that Canada has opened to get e-vehicles from China. And in a sense, he managed to, I think, convince him, because at the end of the conversation, he said, yes, that's a good thing. So diplomacy works. It doesn't really matter if sometimes things go haywire, but at the end, you have to be diplomatic. We can't do anything else but that. That's the most important thing.
Understood.
Yes. Dr. Azhar, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, despite a deal in place and Trump making it clear that it will be operational in days from now, talk to us that how can the G7 leaders really work towards bridging that trust deficit when it comes to the passage of commercial ships? Why the Strait of Hormuz? Because there is definitely security concerns regarding the passage of those vessels through the Hormuz Strait in days to come.
Yes, and there are mines that are supposed to be removed.
Right.
And today, Mark Carney said that that Canada would help. Maybe it doesn't have the facilities, but it has the financial maybe means. It has support from others in the region. But Canada will help to open and overcome the mining issue. And hopefully Iran itself may be able to help in that situation.
Dr. Azhar, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Pleasure speaking with you.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.